Go ahead. Good evening. Welcome to the special voting meeting for the Chichester School District. Tonight we have some board members in the room and a few are still virtual. I'm going to ask Mr. Cardo to roll.
Okay, good evening. Ms. Bianca.
Here.
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Bedwell. Mr. Bartol. Here. Myself here. Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Montella.
Here.
Mr. Sill.
Present.
Mr. Hannigan. Here. Mr. Varelli.
Here.
Dr. Puckett. Here. Mr. Serino. Here. Mr. Testa. Tony here? No.
Tony's on vacation.
Okay. Dr. Curtis? Here. Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Before we do the Pledge of Allegiance and before I'm going to ask you, when we have our moment of silence, there's a few things I would like you to think about when we do that. The first one is we have two students from Chichester School District who lost their lives last week. One is Shamira Morris. She was an 8th grader at Chichester Middle School. She passed away suddenly. We have a Paris Blackwell. He's a graduating senior, and he passed away suddenly last week. That's one of our graduating students and one of our present students, and that's heartbreaking. The third is actually one of our board members who sit with us, Sean Bedwell. Sean Bedwell was in a tragic accident this past weekend. He is in critical condition, and with everybody and everything that you have, he needs your prayers. And I know we're probably not supposed to say that in the public school system, but I'm saying it. His wife needs your strength, and Sean needs your prayers. Please, everyone, keep that family in your thoughts. Pledge allegiance.
I'm going real quick. I'm there.
Yes?
Dad, Rob, Bonarobin. Mr. Serino, I believe, has some information with regards to him.
Well, Mr. Bonarobin has been taken ill for a couple of years now. Regrettably, he's been with the district for about 25 years, technology teacher in the middle school, very beloved, very dedicated to students and staff. Had a great deal in this district, and we just got word about 3 minutes ago that he's passed away.
So we'll add him to our list. Thank you.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so my president's comments are going to be, in a few minutes, we're going to have a presentation from Dr. Brennan from CHOP, from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. My president's comments are to know that the board tonight is going to vote on the virtual or the hybrid. And in my whole self, it's very difficult, no matter what anyone up here votes, it's what you have to do for the right thing. I just know that it's a whole lot for it to be on us. I wish somebody higher than us would make that decision, but they're not, so it's kind of on us tonight. So no matter what our votes are or what we decide as a board, we are going to work together, no matter how it works. So please be patient with us and understand each individual how they vote, because we all believe a different way. We all have different reasons. We've all talked to 50 million people. We all look at different plans. We all look at different numbers, but we've all made our own decisions. And we all will deal with that. Is the doctor ready yet, or?
We have Dr. Brennan coming on at 6:15, so we're going to start our presentation and then take it over to Dr. Brennan, who will be able to expand on some of the statistics data that I will present that led to this decision. As you've seen in Delaware County, many districts have moved to a virtual model. Many others are still waiting and seeing. My worry with that is that there's a lot of planning involved, and we want to do this right for our children. If the virtual plan is approved, we don't want it to look like what it looked like back in March through June of last year. So, and we also think this is the safest way to start out, with the goal, agreeing that the best instruction when students are in school. I'm not going to dispute that, but the objective is to have safety first, and then to work our way into a hybrid model to phase ourselves in. So this evening, presenting with me, I have Dr. Puckett and Dr. Curtis. Dr. Puckett will hit upon the schedule, what the virtual plan will look like. Dr. Curtis will talk about the student services end of the plan. I'm going to go to the next slide, and the next slide will look at the rationale. The superintendents in Delaware County have been meeting weekly for the last 2 months, and it's been a lot of dialogue that's going back and forth and frustration with trying to get guidance from the Chester County Department of Health, the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and based on meetings with Dr. Rubin from CHOP, Dr. Brennan from the University of Pennsylvania, and the Chester County Department of Health, there were decisions that were made among superintendents last week that we were all heading to a virtual model. Some waiting to announce that later, rather than sooner. And it was based on the case counts that were fluctuating in Delaware County, and they based on the positivity rates. Now, Governor Wolf and the Secretary of Ed threw a curveball yesterday by putting out guidance in 3 main areas. They talked about significant, moderate, and low risk. We're in a moderate range, and the moderate range basically puts you in the same position where we would be yesterday as we are today. It says you can be either hybrid or you can be either virtual. It doesn't give you an answer at moderate.
It's no different.
And we'll talk with Dr. Brennan, who is a doctor of infectious disease. You have to look at the hospitalization rates, and you look at they've increased, not when you look at the positivity rates. And there's also inconsistencies. So the Chester County Department of Health has us at 5.2%, which puts us at moderate. Pennsylvania Department of Health has us at 4.9%. So who do you believe? And even in the discussions with the superintendents, the Chester County Department of Health Director, Dr. Gene Kasner, they weren't even given a heads up about PD's guidance that was being sent out yesterday. Neither were the superintendents. So it threw curveballs to districts like Penn-Duckville and Garnet Valley of wondering, well, how do we digest this data? In my opinion, is you digest it the same way you've always been. They're pushing this on local control. No one wants to take accountability. PIAA didn't want to take accountability with athletics. PD doesn't want to take accountability with guiding school districts. So it's on us. And however it's voted, the way school districts are set up, we have 9 board members of votes taken. I'll respect for that votes taken. But in listening with these doctors, and hopefully Dr. Brennan, you'll get a chance to listen to him in 5 minutes. He tunes on in our Microsoft Office Teams. We'll kind of guide you through the discussions we had to have as superintendents, because the minute we open our doors, first we have to worry about we have the staffing. We don't have the staffing, it creates issues of not following the social distancing guidelines, kids being closer than they're supposed to be. Infection rates that rise. You have to have rooms that are quarantine rooms. Well, they gave one example of one girl being infected that affected 3 classrooms. How are you going to put 3 classrooms in one room in quarantine with the parents pick them up? It's a disaster waiting to happen. We feel the safest way to open schools to do it virtually, work our way into a hybrid model. You look at the other bullet items in here, the metrics are multifaceted, the situation is fluid, it's a rolling data, so it's based on the past 2 weeks. They go up and down. The spikes you've seen, most of the incidents are coming from the Jersey Shore of kids being in bars and restaurants, and then bringing it back here. It has gone down a little bit recently, but they're worried about Labor Day, another spike that will happen during the Labor Day holiday weekend. And as you can see, wearing this mask is frustrating. You imagine kids wearing a mask in school too. But that will do that if we had to do it. Moving on, we're dealing with novel virus. We're still in active phase. A lot of opinions. If you watch all the news stations, a lot of opinions on COVID-19. How it's transmitted. We all know that the 3 basic things: 6 feet apart, both parties should be wearing a mask, and washing your hands as frequently as you can. We're on that. But once again, you look at the trends in here, and Dr. Brennan will be able to, you'll see his credentials. He's the Chief Medical Officer and Senior Vice President of the University of Pennsylvania Health Systems. He's board certified in infectious disease and internal medicine. I've gotten plenty of emails from parents. I understand their frustrations. I got plenty of supportive ones. My kids are in the same boat. I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. We're planning on sending them back to hybrid. Their school district, our school decided to go virtual. We're following along with the plan. We believe that that's the safest measurement to go. Well, none of us are doctors, and none of the superintendents are doctors either. This guy's a doctor of infectious disease. Many of your county department of health don't have infectious disease doctors guiding the county department of health. Just to tell you, just so you know that. Just so you, it's a variety. You have nurses doing some of them. You have doctors doing some. You have infectious disease doctor, Dr. Brennan, and Dr. Kuchak, Dr. Rubin, who are willing to advise, because they have a vested interest in the health and safety of children, advise districts, and they're advising all the districts in Delaware County. So I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Puckett while I look to see if Dr. Brennan's on. And I'm going to get out of my screen here because I know he has his screen. And see if I can see if he's joined us.
Can we ask you about anything that you just said?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So were there any, how was this doctor picked?
He actually is interested, and I hope I'm not incorrect, but my understanding is that parents reached out to him in the Springfield School District, that he has an attachment to them. They were concerned about their students returning to school.
Okay.
So then parents said to Dr. Barber, why don't you connect with these doctors, and maybe they could help as you make your decision making. So we didn't feel like we were getting consistent guidance from PDE and the Chester County Department of Health. Jean Kazner's been phenomenal. I don't think she won't say one way or the other because obviously he's waiting in there, he's in the line. I think he's in great.
There he is.
Is that we wanted somebody to guide us because there's so much information out there. We needed some experts, and they offered their guidance based on the parents reaching out.
Did you get any different opinions from any other doctors?
We've only been working with Dr. Rubin and
I think I want to speak to G's point before he comes on.
Well, he's
That
not.
that would be, is he speaking to us to clarify the Chester County Health Department and PDE?
You can ask
Or
me
is he
a question.
giving, or is he giving another, an adverse opinion?
He'll answer any questions you have. It is a thing.
Well, I think G's questions are really pertinent on his qualifications and where we got him from and why.
Well, he spoke at how many different.
Dr. Brennan, thank you very much for joining our
Against
board meeting.
Sure.
So, you're in Chichester's board meeting room. We have our board members, some are virtual and some are here live. And I just introduced how we've developed a relationship with you and the superintendents of Delaware County. If you could just start just describing what you've described in many districts, of what you're seeing out there with the rates of infectious disease with COVID-19, and how it got to the point where many districts are deciding to look at the virtual model as opposed to the hybrid model because of what you're experiencing.
Sure. I'll just, I heard you talking about questions, so I'll just make some brief comments and then let you ask questions. So, I think it should be pretty apparent that the situation is very fluid. Is there an echo?
You're good.
We're good.
You have a little bit of one, but you're okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the situation is very fluid and the numbers change day to day, so I wouldn't pay attention to the day-to-day numbers. And what we're really interested in knowing are the trends in certain metrics, like the test positivity rate and the 7-day trends and the 14-day trends and the overall numbers of cases that are occurring across our geography. So, back in June, we were doing very well, and I thought we'd be in a different place in August, but we're not. In the last week or 10 days, the numbers do seem to be moving in a better direction. The test positivity rate is still above 5%. It's uncertain where we're going to be at the end of the month or when school opens or even into September. So I think the end of the month and the Labor Day holiday is a very critical time because what we've seen in July and into the early part of August, the first few days of August, was an upward trend in test positivity rate and cases in the county. And that seems to have occurred among younger people compared to earlier times, the pandemic in March and April. And a lot of that seems to be associated with social activity, bars, boardwalks, beaches, those kind of things. And also more and more non-essential travel to businesses that we wouldn't consider necessarily, while they may be important, and wouldn't necessarily consider to be essential businesses. And lesser levels of adherence to social distancing and masking. So that has driven the uptick. The governor a few weeks ago put out another recommendation for more adherence to masking and social distance, and that appears to be having an impact already. But the end of the summer is a key issue. And I'm talking to the superintendents. When I was asked my opinion, it was clear to me that the board's superintendent's runway leading up to the beginning of school. And given all the uncertainty, my recommendation was to buy more time by pushing back the in-person opening of school, not opening school in general, but opening up virtually and pushing it back in time. So that you don't open and find out there's another uptick and you have an outbreak in a class or in a building and you end up having to close down a building or the district. So that perspective that I brought to this, you have projections. Projections are based on models. Models are imperfect. We've also had time to see how this pandemic has played out in time. And I think what's pretty clear is that wherever you look across the country, at any jurisdiction, those that have done this well, like Southeastern Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Jersey, places that haven't done so well, like states to the south and the southwest. When you open up cases, sometimes there's others, depending on whether you do it too early or not. But even in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, we've seen an uptick. So I think we can get this back under control. But I'm anticipating that we may see more cases heading into the fall season. And so for that reason, my recommendation was to push back the opening of the participation. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'll stop there and open to the board, Melly, and let the board ask the questions.
Dr. Brennan, the first thing I want to do is thank you for taking your time and just coming on and talking to us.
Dr. Brennan, this is Jackie Jones.
Jack.
I'm wondering,
Jackie,
we
here.
were playing a hybrid
Is
model,
it?
and with that hybrid model, I guess my concern was if a child, a staff member, teacher, becomes and we have to quarantine that section, that class, whatever. How do we, because, I know people want to be back in school, how do we effectively do something like that so it doesn't shut off our learning? Or is there a way to do that so we don't shut off all in-person learning right away?
Sorry, it's muted. The best way to limit the damage is to the greatest extent possible, have your students in cohorts where, they're not moving from a history class to a different group of students in an English class, for example. That's got to be the best way to do it, because if you're mixing them up, then you're going to have more exposures, and that's going to run the risk of shutting down larger segments of the school population. When you have a case, and I think there's, even in the best of circumstances, there's a real risk of having a case, and I think that needs to be clear to parents and students that they're assuming risk in coming back. That when you have a case, the Chester County Health Department will be notified, and to the best of their ability, then they will try to ferret out who the contacts were and how far they need to go in shutting things down. So the more that you can restrict, exposures by working with smaller units of students together, the better off you're going to be. And I realize that's a challenge, but that's going to be the best way to limit the damage.
And what about mask wearing? If we were in a hybrid situation and kids were 6 feet apart, would wearing masks for the whole day make any difference in this recommendation, or is that not effective enough?
Yeah, masks really cannot be optional. You have to have masks. I try to bring a practical view to this, and I just think that, the notion of having kids 6 feet apart all the time is going to be limited. And, the greater distance you can create, the better off you will be. There is benefit to 3 feet apart, there's benefit to 4 feet apart, but 3 feet seems to me to be pretty much the typical distance between students. So there is some benefit to that, but the PBE has put out its guidance on this, and it has said 6 feet, and 6 feet is I would say it's an optimal practical distance. Some droplets travel farther than 6 feet. So I think that masking, even when 6 feet apart, makes sense. And I think that, also from a practical matter, you're going to have to provide mask breaks to kids. I'm working in the hospital right now, and I can tell you, as you probably all know, it's not easy. Particularly moving around. So it'll be challenging for teachers to have masks on all the time. So mask breaks are going to be essential, but they'll have to be brief, I think, and just give them a chance to get a gulp of air and take the mask off their face.
Dr. Brennan, this is David Barthoff. I'm at home, I'm virtually. Just so we're clear, how many children have died in Pennsylvania from COVID so far?
I'm not aware of any deaths in Pennsylvania. So that's...
Okay, can you talk briefly about perhaps the medical dangers of socially isolating kids, maybe with depression, mental illness, being home, home?
Yeah, so I think that's a real...
Death?
I'm sorry, I was talking over you. Could you say that again? I apologize.
No, I said that there's 0 deaths from COVID with the children. What are the health risks of having the kids home alone, the suicide, mental illness, all those things that are propagated by keeping the kids out of the school?
Well, let me come back to the death issue first, because that's not the only hazard. There are clearly multi-system inflammatory syndromes that occur and leave kids with serious and perhaps lifelong disabilities. We don't know for sure. There's a tremendous amount that we still don't know about this virus. We do know that kids get sick. We know they get infected. We know they get sick. We know that they spread it to other people. And they may even be better shedders of the virus than adults in some cases. So just because they don't die doesn't mean it's not hazardous. And, you know, in school, we're bringing people back together indoors, and that's the best way to transmit the virus, indoor close activities. Now, in terms of the other risks, I think these are obviously issues that have to be grappled with, and they're very real. You've got high-risk populations of students, and let me make a disclaimer: I'm not a pediatrician, and I'm not a psychologist, but I understand the hazards of kids not being in school, and the challenges to their. Well, let me finish. The challenges to their to their development. So I get that. I think that we have to weigh the relative risks of each of these, and at this point in time, where we are and where we might be has led me to the conclusions that I've given you. I was asked by another board, what will we do if we're in the same place a month from now? That we haven't progressed below 5%, but we're in a steady state, so to speak. That would not be a very desirable situation, but at some point, I think that the lines will cross, and we'll have to make a decision to bring kids back, even though it's not in the most desirable situation. If test positivity is 10%, I think you'll really be thinking about shutting down schools across the Commonwealth. If it's under 5%, if it's under 3%, we'll be in a much better place. And I think that's going to be our best opportunity to keep this going forward, and not instead of having a sort of a herky-jerky back and forth opening and closing environment. So we want to get this down as low as we can. We haven't done that yet. New York City is talking about opening up, and they're the only large school district in the country that's doing that. And they're down around 1%. They've really done it very well.
Okay, Dave, can you hold on for 1 second?
H1N was around.
Can you not hear me?
Well, when the CDC reported 60 million cases of this, I never heard about they're shutting down the schools.
Dave, I'm sorry. We only have the doctor for 15 more minutes, and there's other board members that want to ask questions.
Sure.
If we have time at the end, would that be okay?
No, that's fine, I just.
Okay. Chief, did you have a question?
I do. Are there any different opinions of yours?
I'm sorry?
Are there any different opinions of yours?
Any opinions that differ from mine?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure there are opinions all over the spectrum.
How about the CDC?
The CDC has not established thresholds yet for reopening. Talked with CDC staff in the community guidance division last week, and talked to them about the work they're doing, and they haven't established guidance. As you know, the Commonwealth put out guidance yesterday, putting all of the counties and Philadelphia in the moderate risk category, which allows for both virtual and virtual and hybrid education. So there are a variety of opinions on this.
And when you say
But I think that where I'm coming down is right in the mainstream of public health recommendations.
Bruce, can I ask a question?
1 second, Megan, 1 second.
I
Let
just
Chief
want
finish.
one more. When you say a mask break, what would that be? How long would that be?
I'm sorry, you said a mask break?
Yeah.
I'm having a little trouble hearing some of you.
When you're saying kids need
I
to.
think there's questions like that. There's no firm information on that. So I think about it. Here's the way I think about it.
they're gonna take
An
them off.
exposure that leads to transmission typically takes somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. So, at one point it was considered to be 10 minutes, now it's got to be more like 15 minutes. If you're getting 3 5-minute breaks an hour, you're probably having enough exposure without a mask to equal transmission. So I think that the way you ought to do it is in a structured way, give everybody in a class break at the same time, 5 breaks, but probably 5 minutes an hour in a structured way.
Okay, Frank, did you want to go? Megan,
No,
1 second, okay?
Megan, go ahead, bounce back.
Okay, go ahead, Megan.
Okay, Dr. Brennan, what I'm wondering if COVID-19 is one thing, but we're also going to run into your regular cold and flu season. That is, has your sinus infections and your pneumonia for your regular stuff. I mean, is it more dangerous in that season to expose kids to both? Does that up the risks of there being severe complications for the kids? If they were to get like a cold and pneumonia and catch COVID on top of it?
We don't know yet. We sort of, in all of this, maybe the only break that we caught was that COVID came to this region right at the very tail end of the flu season. So we track influenza cases, and the last of the influenza cases were occurring in the very first week that we saw COVID. So we really don't have any experience with whether that's going to be better or worse or the same. So it's certainly going to make it more difficult. We're going to, when we get into the cold season, we're going to have to, I think we're going to have to have a low threshold for evaluating kids and, getting clearance for them to, come back into the school environment. We just don't know whether there's going to be an additive effect or not.
Thank you.
Okay, Frank.
Doctor, my name is Frank Sill, I'm the school director. My question is, just interested in your opinion. Do you think there's an argument or a justification for conducting sports as opposed to in-person class? Do you think that the safeguards could be accomplished to have not just sports, but things like band, where there is in-person community amongst the students? Do you think that is more feasible? Do you think that is doable?
So doing one in lieu of the other? I mean, you don't have in-person class, but doing the extracurriculars.
Or both, what weigh the risk of each exercise.
Yeah, I think it's been shown already. I think we've seen this, that transmissions occur during athletic activities, and it's probably through the generation of aerosols that others are in close contact with repeatedly. We saw it in the NBA. That wasn't just about the players banging against each other. It probably had to do with the aerosols that they were blowing out as they were exerting themselves. You had the center on one team, getting sick and finding out the center on the other team was carrying the virus. So that kind of contact has been proven to spread. So I would expect that contact sports like football, soccer, even lacrosse, and basketball would be the most hazardous. Now, it is possible to do conditioning of individual skills development, but I don't think those heavy contact sports make sense until we have more control than we have today. And I'm already aware of basketball teams in the county, or I should say it in the plural, a basketball team that's been shut down because of cases on the team. Band poses different kinds of hazards. The biggest hazards are from the horn, the woodwinds, the brass, where the valves, the horns are capable of blowing out aerosol. I think you really have to be careful about those. So marching in close formation, I think would be a problem. Spreading on the concert stage, I think there needs to be precautions. We know that singing is transmission. I think having choral together or try and put on a school would be.
Okay, Nancy, did you have a question?
Yeah, so Dr. Brennan, just to review, this is Nancy Johnson, one of the school directors. You had mentioned about, for example, if the kids were in the school, for the transmission rates, it would be higher at a high school level where they're mixing classes, changing classes, going from chem to gym to, algebra versus maybe an elementary school level where they sit in the same seat all day. Is that what you're saying, that transmission rates would be much higher than at a high school level?
What I'm saying is that sort of movement is going to leave you more vulnerable to having more people exposed. So if you have a case in a chemistry class and that student then goes to with a different cohort of students to a social studies class, then you've got a second cohort that's exposed. The particulars of whether there's a great likelihood of spread or not depend on lots of factors, including ventilation and time together, and how much virus is being spread. However, the older kids are more likely to get sick. So, whenever you talk about the numbers that about the city of Delaware County, multiply it by a factor of 6 to 10, because we haven't done enough testing to really know, but there are very few children under the age of 10 who have gotten sick. You can count them on the fingers of 2 hands, the ones that we know about at least. But when you get to the 10 to 19-year-old, you're talking about 450 or more kids known to have gotten infected, and it's probably on a sliding scale with them being identified in the older teenagers. I don't have a breakdown. But the older kids are going to be more susceptible to infection because of the way their respiratory systems mature, they become more vulnerable, and they're more likely to have a serious infection.
Thank you.
Ed, do you have a question? Mr. Cardell? He's muted.
No, yeah, I just turned the mute off. I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I've seen and heard Dr. Brennan a couple times. His message is consistent, so
Okay.
Dr. Brennan, I thank you.
I'm glad it's consistent.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes left before we let Dr. Brennan, go ahead, Jane.
Hi, I have one more question. Did you say 450 kids from the ages of 10 to 19 had COVID?
Those are the reported data.
Okay, how many kids aged 10 to 19 had the flu this year?
I would guess, I don't know. During this time frame, I would say probably none. Why do you ask?
I'm just curious, because children get sick all the time.
Yeah.
So you would say no
No,
kids?
That's going to vary from season to season. I don't know what it was for the last season.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we appreciate your time, Dr. Brennan. Thank you so much for taking out your time to come on.
Thank you,
Okay,
Dr. Brennan.
Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, so Dr. Puckett? Yes.
Okay, we're going to head back to the presentation now. And if you look at the slide that says, what will virtual look like? So this is one of the largest questions we've received from our constituents is we know the fear of what happened last spring, and rest assured to the school board, to our staff, to our parents, to our students, it will not be the same thing you saw from March to June. And why is that? Well, for one reason, we were given little to no guidance on how to educate students during a pandemic. It was a pandemic. We had a sudden closure in schools, which resulted in inequity in access to technology. We were unable to provide a laptop or a device to every student. Teachers were bouncing, reviewing information, but presenting no information, and not to mention that our expectations were fluid as they were evolving as the situation grew. And for our parents who are still trying to figure out what to do with their own children at home, being home, work, and all that stuff, it just created not a favorable situation for us. So we learned, and the data shows from surveys we've asked, that synchronous learning is a must in the online learning environment. That is our live teaching, interactive teaching. Our structure and consistency for students is a must. We must be able to say this is a schedule, this is our expectation, this is what we want students to be on. Clear expectations is what does it look like, and the ability to catch up from your last year, and not to mention move forward with new information, because that is the important piece of educating our students. What I'm showing you now on the next slide is this is just a mock elementary schedule. So what we wanted to do tonight was present our virtual options by showing two schedules, an elementary and a secondary schedule. This is by far not completed yet. It has been worked through many meetings with principals. Some staff has started to be involved, our CEA membership, our leadership. But the idea what we wanted to share with parents tonight is that they see that we are planning to develop a schedule that would mimic a lot of what our students would see during the course of the day. We feel that that structure is important, that we want it to be seamless in the event we go to hybrid, back to full face-to-face, our end goal, as Mr. Norelli said, but structure, and again, the idea that there's a schedule in place. So looking at this schedule here, what we're just kind of showing is the initial thought process is that a lot of our synchronous learning, which is our actual hands-on teacher time, would occur in the morning. That's when our kids are fresh, that's when they're ready to roll, that's when they're excited about learning. So the opportunity is to capture them there and do that live teaching. And at our elementary level, we use Microsoft Teams. We're sticking to Microsoft Teams. We've learned more about Microsoft Teams. We're training our teachers more in Microsoft Teams. We have some trainings available and resources available for them. But the idea is that they're going to teach their class schedule. Last year it was grade level taught because, again, we were trying to figure out what to do, how to review. This time it will be individual teacher taught. Kids will be assigned a class section, and in that they will get to meet their teacher. I mentioned this at the last board meeting. We also have invested, and thank you to the support of the school board, in a consultant who has developed a coursework. We've used this consultant before, and one of the courses that we're asking teachers to do, and part of our agenda we'll be on for vote next week, is a Choice PD Day, where we're going to flex out February 12th and give teachers an opportunity to do this course, to have that day as they've done their own PD. This course is called Setting the Stage in Virtual Learning and Remote Learning, and it's going to really take teachers through how to establish those relationships, which are so critical. That's what our teachers crave by the in-person, so we're looking at how to mimic that in the virtual world. So you can see the synchronous opportunities in the morning. We have breaks built in, we have lunchtime built in, and then you'll see throughout the different levels at the end, in the afternoon time, we have intervention opportunities for our special education students, for students who need catch up, for students just, maybe different specials. We have asynchronous opportunities in the afternoon. Those asynchronous are more of the times that kids will be doing work. Maybe it's something that they would have done in a station in the class when they're working independently. They may work independently on a link to a website that they're used to doing, like our SC Math or the new ELA resource. They'll be working on that. But that's also time for teachers to be available for individual help. So it could be I log in, I have some help with my teacher, I'm here to help you through this process, I'm here to give you some support. If you also notice, we're very heavy on the support piece to the virtual model. We know that that's a big thing that we need to provide for our students and our parents. So you'll see that there's, the social signs are built in the afternoon. And then we have those individual check-ins and the office hours for families. Now, right now, what we're playing around with is looking at 45 to 60 minutes for synchronous. That doesn't mean that we're asking a child to log on and for exactly 1 hour be logged in. It could be, we're also doing some research on what is best synchronous learning habits. It could be 5-minute warm-up, talk to kids, get them to do something, get them motivated, just like we would in the classroom, that hook or an anticipatory set, and then getting into some of the live instruction, maybe having them break and do something while we can talk to them, have them see what they're doing, maybe they can talk to a partner through the Microsoft Teams, and then come back and close out the lesson. But we're saying that is a live time. We're really trying to mimic what our kids get in the classroom, like that station time, that time with them, moving a resource, the reading time. And then, like I said, that asynchronous time is going to be time for them to work independently, which is really going to focus on maybe prepping for something else or reinforcing a skill, which our kids do often in class now. So that's just kind of a mock elementary schedule. We'll work out the details as far as the minutes and things. We're still working on those, but we wanted to get an idea for our parents to show that we've committed to making sure that this experience is a lot different than what they experienced in the spring. As far as our secondary schedule, this will be the schedule we're using for both middle school and high school. Again, meeting with the principals and their teams. Our thought process here was, again, not an overload. We cannot overload our students. We know that 8 periods at 45 minutes a day online is exhausting. We know that kids are going to lose interest, which means that they're losing interest. They're also going to lose motivation, which means they're going to stop getting the key components that they need to do. So we want to break it up and we'll provide, again, that synchronous and that asynchronous opportunities. So typically, our high school runs on an A, B, C, D, E, F schedule. So if you look at kind of track the greens, on your A, C, and E days, periods 1 through 4 will be scheduled synchronous times. Again, 45, 60 minutes of learning. That's going to be the time where that first period teacher is meeting with the first period students. I'm logging on, there's my teacher, there's my class. Again, that's synchronous. I'm doing my set, my disciplinary set, I'm doing my warm-up, and I'm teaching the kids for that period. Again, our goal is to mimic what the high school looks like, the middle school looks like on a normal day. We want our students to be able to seamlessly transition back into school. We want them to be able to go right back in, because our goal is to get back into school. We don't want to change and create a modified schedule that's something different, and then all of a sudden, hey, by the way, you're back to school, now do this. We want them to get in the routine. We want normalcy as best as we can. The afternoon is that asynchronous opportunities. Again, that opportunity for reinforcement, maybe some independent work. A lot of our kids do have that. Our special areas are built into here. Our unified arts are built into here, so we're not skipping on any of those. Those were things that we did back in the spring that, you know, might be a physical education teacher says, here's what I want you to do for the next 2 weeks. Or the course teacher says, I want you to do this for the next 3 weeks. We're not doing that now. We're meeting with our students. We're giving them lessons. We're giving them opportunities to do the work and demonstrate their understanding of it. Especially at the secondary level and specifically the high school, our special areas or unified arts are some things that kids major in. So we want to make sure they're important to us, they're met. We have a ton of kids who go off to be art majors, music majors, world language majors, so we want to make sure that that is just as viable as what everything else we're doing. So that is the proposed mock secondary. Again, we're going to work out the details to the schedule.
Can I ask a question, Greg? So if compared to the virtual model versus a hybrid model, at this point, I'm looking at, you'll only get, what, if we have an A and B day, you'll get the same lesson on the hybrid schedule. You get the same lesson on day A as the same lesson on day B. So the teacher will teach the same lesson 2 days. Have a day off, come in Thursday, teach a lesson, Friday have a secondary lesson with the second half of the class. So, but virtually, we could potentially be teaching something new every single day to our students versus
Absolutely.
maybe getting half of the work if they were hybrid in school versus a full workload virtually.
Correct, and so that's a great point. So the virtual model provides us the opportunity to actually deliver the curriculum at a more succinct pace than what they're used to. The hybrid model, because of the restrictions that are in place, because of having to maintain our distance and bring in, as Dr. Brennan said, we can't even do cohorts at the high school because I know you should follow up, which is one of mine. It's just impossible. You can't have a chemistry teacher teach the same kids because they're different levels. So our kids are going to have to intermix into different classrooms with kids because that's just the way we have to do it at the high school level. So this model allows us to maintain that pace as best as we can. It's not going to be as accelerated as we would, but it's going to be pretty close to it because if you notice with the asynchronous opportunities, and the next page I'll talk about expectations, that's that time for students to really prepare for the next class. So it's really like getting ready for the next day because as I heard from one teacher, when we talked about this, when I'm on, I'm on. That's my time. Like I need those kids captive for that 45 minutes. That's where I'm teaching them everything I can, and then I'm going to give them work to get ready for the next one or reinforce what I did. So correct, this actually allows you to maintain that pace. And that's very important for our kids in the AP courses, because our AP courses have a set date. So that again, this does maintain that. I'm sorry, did you have a question, Jackie?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out. So if there are children who, for some reason, can't log on during their synchronous time, if there's an internet issue or their parents are available or they're in daycare, is there a way for them to access the lessons later?
So that's a great point. Obviously, it's a secondary that would be least likely an error. If it's something secondary and technology-wise, that's a communication to the teacher, just as if they were treating them like young adults if it was a college level. But more for your elementary level, that's a conversation we're continuing to develop, is what do we do for those students who, as a childcare issue, we're hoping it's far and few because we're presenting this up front, and like you'll see in our timeline schedule, giving parents enough time to prepare. But in the event of that, that's a discussion we're having, and we need to continue having with our CEA reps and administration as far as what that looks like.
I also have a question. Did anybody read what Lower Marion is doing, where the teachers are actually going to be in the building, in school all day?
We did.
Been all over the news.
And what do you think about that?
I think that it complicates things. We're working with CA, so there's one thing. So most of the districts of Delaware County have made it voluntary for teachers to come in. Others have done the opposite, which we will discuss with CA, is forcing them to come in, and they have to go through the whole leave request based on childcare because of the new Family Medical Leave Act based on COVID. And in that case, you're just making them fill out the paperwork and they'd be home anyway, learning it. So
Well, they would be home with, first of all, they have to get their paperwork filled out. And it's only 2 weeks of regular pay and 10 weeks of 2/3 pay. So are they all?
it is, but if it's a chemistry teacher and you force that, it's not that easy to find a chemistry teacher to teach chemistry. So
That's the
we can
problem.
force the envelope. The only problem is it's a physics teacher, you're not gonna find a physics teacher. So you're better off, we're finding in Delaware County, and Lower Marion's running in this issue. They may change courses.
That was on the-
And Central Bucks had to go to virtual because they couldn't staff it based on measures of trying to get teachers in because of these leave acts that teachers have.
And then my other half to that question is, so you're telling me the teachers are worried about their kids being home and them not being home with their kids? How about every other working family?
I think they're worried about the environment that a teacher's exposed to, having been a teacher, of whether it's 15 kids in a classroom or 25, being exposed.
No,
to
I'm
different-
talking about doing all virtual or all online with the teachers being in the school.
They can, but they have the rights to take those leaves, and they can.
They absolutely do.
And if they
yeah.
do, it creates a complication for us to staff even the virtual program. Because if they take a leave, and it's one of those certification areas that we have a hard time filling, special ed,
So in other words, you're saying that they're more worried about their kids being home and them being home with their kids than the kids in the school district being home, and what do those
I
parents do
can't
with
speak
this?
for them. All I can say is that our teachers care about their kids and our kids. So for them to delineate whether one or the other, I can't speak for them. If I'm a teacher, I'm caring about both. So you gotta make a decision. You gotta make a decision based on the kids at home
That's
or your
like,
kids in school.
it's like any job right now that they just passed this, so they
Correct.
can put in for.
Oh, they can, but you're getting 2 weeks of full pay and 10 weeks of 2/3 pay.
Right.
If-
So anybody can do it, I absolutely agree with that.
I would say that if most of our teachers, if they could be in, would rather be in, it creates, obviously, more convenient for them to be able to see what's going on with their children at home, considering that many of our teachers have kids in other districts. That for us to be able to have a working relationship to get this done, to be able to take off, if we take the hard approach, we're gonna run into staffing issues. We could, we very well could.
I don't know that you keep saying the hard approach. We have a lot of parents in our district too that have to go to work every day.
Well, I know, but these teachers
So
can
it's
do the
double?
same job home as they can do in the classroom.
I
They
thought-
can.
I thought we established that in person. I think Dr. Puckett's the one who started the conversation out earlier, that it's given that in person is more effective than virtual in
This is different.
general. No, that was
You're
part of
correct,
our
we established
discussion.
it, not in virtual.
And I think to G's point, and to your point, I don't think any of the teachers have anything else in mind than the best thing for our students, absolutely. But I do feel over the last couple of weeks, since we got notice that we were contemplating or heading toward virtual, that these decisions are staffing driven. And I have a philosophical problem with that. You know, it's our mission statement, kids first. I mean, that's what's been drilled into me. And kids are first, you know, with a period, with a comma, you know, seniors first and everybody's first. But the point would be, you know, we have to make a decision what's best for the children. And that's the first thing we do. And then these staffing issues are something that I think we have to address. But go ahead, I'm sorry, I just want to put my 2 cents in.
I just want to make it clear, I agree with you that in-person is the best. In a virtual world, if they're teaching virtually from the classroom, they can do the same thing at home, teaching virtually. So
I'll agree with that.
that is why I wouldn't take a hard stance. If we're going hybrid, obviously, we need our teachers to be in for the hybrid.
I heard Southeast Delco was requiring to bring their teachers into the classroom, is that true? No?
No, it wasn't that, it wasn't.
No.
I heard a lot of rumors out there. I hear
Now,
them-
Dan, I have a question.
Go ahead, Megan.
If our teachers find that it's easier to teach in school online with their whiteboards and their classroom, and they feel like that's an easier setup for them, maybe they do have
Somebody can
to
discuss
go
this.
about it, can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our original stance was that we'd like them to come in, we encourage them to come in. However, if they have a circumstance that requires them to be home, instead of going through all the paperwork for the virtual model, a hybrid's a different story, then we would allow them to teach at home in order not to run into any of those certification areas if we take the harder approach of having them all be in the classroom. Some don't have to be in the classroom. But to your point, some would have.
Well, no, but I've heard from some that prefer it.
Yeah, and we would not.
Agreed.
Right, we
Having
would-
their stuff in front of them, their whiteboard to show their kids that and face to face would be easier, so I gotta make sure we're providing that option.
It is easier
Absolutely.
sometimes to go in and do it. Trust me, to work at home is not always easy.
We would prefer them to come in, to answer your question. We would allow that, encourage that on the virtual model.
The hybrid model.
Okay, thank you.
The hybrid model that we voted on
The kids go 2 days.
3 weeks ago, and I understand that, I read it over several times. And in that model, it gives an option to, whoever wants to, or afraid to come back, to stay virtual. Could you review, I know we sent out what we called an MOU, and we had a response we sent that out to everybody with children in the school district. And what I've heard recently, and correct me, these are rumors, I'm not sure. I've heard that we have 70% response with the MOU. Is that correct?
It's about an average return is about
70% response?
return, yeah.
Yeah, exactly 70% or just?
Not exactly.
Okay, around 70%. And out of that 70%, 60% preferred to in-person, send their children in person?
It was about a split of
40-some.
40 to 50% of that.
Where did I get that from? There was an email from a parent addressed.
Can we get
and
those numbers?
We have a number.
And you answered it.
I like them.
It was an email from a parent about this
Yeah.
particular
Gave
thing.
her a
You
proxy,
answered it, and it was 70, and I'll pull it up, and it was 70, and it was 60 and 40, so that might have been a mistake on the email.
Maybe, I don't know, but
Yeah, that might
Can
have
we
been a
get
mistake.
those numbers before we vote tonight?
But even if it wasn't 60-40, even if it wasn't 60-40, it was 50-50.
I don't have them categorized enough to pull it based on,
Let's just finish
building wise.
the presentation and do our vote. I think everybody knows what they're gonna vote.
Okay,
finish
so
the presentation.
moving to the expectations slide. On the expectations, one of the things that we also realized we had to make very clear was just what we're expecting from our students, okay? Again, the expectations are to follow a school day. We want our students to log in for attendance recording purposes, either using Microsoft Teams or Schoology, whatever platform is at their level. We want students to attend their synchronous learning time, which is the live teaching time. The asynchronous learning is used to balance it, so it will be scheduled, but we need students to work on that information, prepare for the next lesson. Submit work on time. Work will be graded. I know a question that came up in some of the questions we received was, will be pass fail. It is going to, we're following our district policy. It will be graded work. And then our unified arts and specials is a combination of synchronous, asynchronous, and grading. So we want our students to be part of that. And are utilizing our breaks time. We want our students to take a break and be away from the computer, to do a brain break, to get fresh, and to get ready for the next opportunity to learn. The uncertainties at this time is obviously the discussion we've been talking about, which is staffing. Still working on staffing, addressing the accommodations, the needs in the district, the roles and responsibilities of our support staff. Laptop distribution is something that came up in a question. We are in the process of finalizing that. I do have a schedule that Mr. McGrath has put together, and we're working out with principals. So we'll be setting that up. The goal is to have that ready to go before the start of school. We want the actual bell schedule we're still working on. We're working on finalizing the actual times that will be set up and established for students and parents that are aware. We also understand that for parents, you're working, and so getting your child up, getting ready to go might take some time. So we're looking at those times. It may not be exactly what they experienced during the school day when we're in session, maybe a little bit later, just because we do realize that there's family things going on at home, getting prepared and getting ready. Vote Tech, we're still working on. We know that Vote Tech is operating. However, we're waiting for final word on schedules, so that's a question that has come up recently. Dr. Curtis, Special Education.
All right, good evening. So a few things about special education. First and foremost, all IEPs will be fully implemented in the virtual environment. So we are looking at small group sessions, co-taught classes, pull-out sessions that are secluded with special education teachers. IEPs will be fully implemented. So last year when we were forced into the virtual instructional model, there was definitely some rush to get some things in place, and things weren't as ideal as they could be. So at the time that we have to prepare, if the board approves this virtual model, then our students with IEPs will have their IEPs fully implemented. One of the things that we're looking to do for this school year, and even if we would go to a hybrid model, we're looking to do all IEP and 504 meetings virtually. So we really need to limit exposure to our kids and staff. So we will make sure that any visitors, parents, advocates that need to be a part of IEP or 504 meetings, that it's done virtually, so that way our kids don't have the exposure of a lot of adults coming in. We've done some virtual IEP meetings throughout the end of last year, and they worked out great. So there's no reason that we can't really work on that piece. There may be a need for some changes to our SDIs to reflect that the specially designed instruction is going to be done in the virtual environment. So a lot of our SDIs and our students' IEPs can be done in both physical locations as well as virtual locations, but some of them are going to need to be tweaked to really help support our students who are fully online or fully virtual. So our staff, during some of the opening days where we have PD, they will work on getting some of the IEPs tweaked that need to be tweaked. One of the things that we've talked pretty extensively about in the People Services Department is the possibility of having some of our students with the most severe special needs coming into the schools for in-person instruction. And I strongly feel that we need to make sure that the kids with the most severe needs have that opportunity to come in for in-person instruction. We're looking at mostly low incidence populations, which would include our life skills population, our autistic support population, and then just based on some of the needs, we're also looking at our emotional support population. But we're really looking at all of our students individually to figure out which students have the most needs that would dictate the biggest need for them to be in person in our physical buildings. So it really is an individual-based decision, as is all special education. So we're having ongoing discussions with our staff, with our administrators, and of course the teacher union about what this would look like to be able to have our students in the buildings for multiple days a week for in-person instruction. So I'm actually meeting tomorrow with CEA about this possibility. One of the things that we want to make sure that our parents know is that if your child's being considered for some in-person instruction because of their special needs, the People Services Department will be reaching out to you. We have a plan in place to be able to do that by the week of August 24th. It may be during that week of August 24th, but that is the deadline that we gave ourselves to make sure that we get reached out to all of our parents who are going to have the in-person instruction for their children. The plan is for this to happen whether the board votes to do a fully virtual model or if the board votes to do a hybrid model. If it's a hybrid model, we still want our students with the most severe needs to have 4, if not 5 days of in-person instruction. And of course, there's a lot of logistics to work out with that, but we definitely feel strongly that this needs to happen. Related services has come up quite a bit. So related services includes our speech therapy, our occupational therapy, and our physical therapy. There's some counseling and a few other things that might fall into there. We are looking to do our related services virtually for our students who are on the virtual instructional piece. And if they're in school in person, then some of that will be done in person. But some of it may still be done virtually for those kids. I know that there's been some concerns. So parents, if you have a child with an IEP, and for whatever the reason, the related services are not working out to be done virtually, you need to reach out to your case manager first, and then if you need to, you can go up through the hierarchy and reach out to me as well. We will take a look at your child's needs, again, individually based. We want to make sure that all of our students' needs are being fully met. Lastly, we have some students who are in the evaluation process for special education. Those evaluations will be ongoing. Our school psychologists have already been asking if they can start to have kids come into our buildings, use social distancing, but get some of the testing that has to be done in a secure environment, if they can have that get started right now, get done. So that way we have the students who have evaluations, that we can get those evaluations completed. And that's all I have for about special education, so if there's any questions.
Never having sat in on an IEP, I would imagine there's benefit to having an in-person IEP. I mean, you started out with talking about the virtual IEPs, and I'm asking, I really don't know or haven't. But I would think that the IEPs are such an important part of it would be the actual visitation with the child as part of the IEP meeting, correct?
Yeah, the child's not usually in the meeting.
So at the secondary level, we do ask the students to be involved.
Yeah, but not the
They
elementary,
are,
yeah.
but at elementary, we
Just a
typically.
fine point that, but especially like in the end there, you did say that a lot of in-person can be done because you can social distance and all, but I just thought that was a curiosity that you do that virtual. But I'm so glad to hear the rest of it, that you were want to bring most of the students or the students that need it in-person learning several days a week, and that is good news to hear. In either case, hybrid or virtual.
Yeah, and that's not a definite yet. We are still working through a few hoops that we need to jump through to make sure it can happen, but that's our
That's a
desire.
big concern. And I thought, I would think in the general population, I'm really not knowledgeable about this. The whole group of our students with IEPs, out of that group, I'm asking, most of them would need somebody overseeing their virtual learning, or do you think that a lot of these students, like the general population, could be left to some degree of autonomy, whether they're doing that, or does your IEP group need a parent there?
So as far as the virtual instruction goes, all of our students with special needs all have case managers. And those case managers are really sort of the shepherds of our special needs students. They are the ones who are really responsible to make sure that the proper instruction is happening and that the student's IEP is being followed. And so our case managers do a wonderful job of keeping an eye on the students and helping make sure that things are going how they really need to be. They're also the main point of contact for many of our parents. So of course, all of our case managers will be making sure that our students with special needs that they're.
But at home, if these IEP students are virtual, do you see them needing more parental supervision than our normal student body?
I mean, some of them definitely will. I mean, and that's part of the reason why we want some of our most severe students to be in school.
And is there any way that we reach out to the parents and ensure that this is a possibility if we go virtual? I mean, we're on the verge of going virtual here. And do we know that this group of students has that at-home help?
To our families, mostly because we don't know what model the board is going to vote on. So we didn't want to start calling everybody and getting parents geared up for one direction. That's why I particularly think that it's important that the board make decisions tonight, and it gives our staff time to plan and reach out to parents as well as parents time to plan, and they know what model we're following. So there's a lot of work to do over there. I mean, we've been working very hard over the past 2 months to try and gear up for the opening, but it's going to continue to be very busy.
Yeah, as board directors, I know we're all hearing from a lot of our parents or constituents in our different areas, and that's one of the biggest things that I hear, that, what the heck am I going to do? Nobody's here. I have a 12-year-old that's going to be watching a 7-year-old. It's just hard to even fathom the virtual model for me, for a lot of our parents.
Okay, just to wrap up quickly, so the last couple of slides are on our timeline. The first timeline there is talking about elementary and secondary schedules are being finalized. They are in the process of being wrapped up. We met administrative-wise, we're involving teachers in the process, making sure we have these ready to roll for our students. So we are looking, this is our goal we set forth, is that the week of the 24th, as a couple things should be coming out, or August 24th, that week of. We're looking at the final schedules, ready to roll, send out to parents, individual student schedules, if not earlier. Which is why on one of the agenda items this evening is the requested change, the proposed change to start school to September 8th. We felt that starting August 31st with a decision tonight being made does not provide us adequate enough time to really have our teachers prepared to go virtual. As you know, as this has been fluid and changing and evolving, originally we were preparing our teachers for hybrid, moving into virtual now causes a little bit more work that needs to be done. So we were proposing on the calendar changes that the new start date would be September 8th, which is what we have typically started, which is the day after Labor Day. We would propose that adding 3 more teacher days in the beginning of the year, which would be August 31st, September 1st, and 2nd would be teacher and service days. We have clear expectations of what we expect our teachers to be ready to do for the start of school. In order to maintain the contracted 190, which is what teachers are contracted to this year, we also are required by the state of PA to meet 180 school days. Each year we build in 183, we build in 3 snow days. But in order to offset the teachers ending on the last day of students because they have a already an MOU with the school board for a choice day, we would do the 182 school days. As we're still above the 180, so mean or miss. That's subject to change. A lot of this can change as things evolve. Last year, if you remember, Governor changed and waived the 990 and 180 days. So as things continue, we'll bring a new calendar to the board. But we feel that this one, the 2 days of November 2nd and 3rd are also not going to be in service days. They would be student days. Proposed right now is our schedule. On the next slide is the timeline. Continue. We're looking at November 6th as what we said is a return, but that is just to give parents enough time to basically prepare for childcare. Mr. Riley, did you want to talk a little bit more about this one?
So, as superintendents, we're evaluating with the Chester County Department of Health. We've also consulted with Dr. Rubin and Dr. Brennan. We're also looking at the metrics from PDE, and Chester County Department of Health is supposed to send out their own metrics by the end of this week, early next week, which will be another measure that we can present to the board. And obviously, the goal is to get students back into the building in some way, shape, or form. That's all I have to add at that point regarding the timeline.
Greg, if we go back before November 6th, would our calendar change at all? Like, would we be closed to let you know?
Well, right now we have to, because if we start, because of the way, the only other option would be to add days at the end of the year. So we felt that they're in service days to begin with, since we're front loading, giving teachers more time to prepare for either model, that those days would remain as student days.
Okay. We have agenda-related citizens' comments that have been sent in, and you want to...
So we had comments that came in from yesterday and today. We vetted through them and came with common themes. Many of them have been embedded in the presentation, such as IEP questions, teachers teaching virtually, whether it be in the building or at home. IAs, what are we going to do with IAs if we're virtual? That's a discussion that we'll be having with the principals to see how they're going to be utilized. Because there are people worried about cuts to staff. That's something that we'll have to make sure that we look at how we're utilizing staff and making sure that they're needed for the virtual platform versus the hybrid platform. Obviously, the hybrid platform presents much more need for the current staffing levels that we have. Another question that came up about sports and in the other item, I think right now we know Academy Park is in Belleville. Sports related has canceled all sports in the fall. Philadelphia, which we don't play, has canceled all in the fall. So I thought that'd be a discussion for next week that we talked about that Board President Bialko mentioned. There are 3 comments that were in here that I'll mention. One is from a Lisa Iqbal, 1123 Washington Avenue, Apartment B, Marcusville, PA. Her comment is that single working families, that she can't afford to stay home with their children because of their jobs. Also, some of us cannot afford to quit our job to stay home and be teachers to our kids, or we lose everything. If you all or state want to pay us what teachers make to stay home, that's fine. But other than that, I cannot quit my job to stay home or lose my farm and car. It's sad that we families will lose everything. My daughter's daycare has been open for over a month with no COVID cases, and the children are wearing masks like they should. You mean to tell me schools can't open, but daycares can? This is ridiculous. A lot of the parents agree. Next comment is from a Trevor Nobler at 1515 Cherry Street, Upper Chichester, PA. He wants to know why when the hashtag WhyChiLink is going to be activated. If you saw our mailing that came out and talked about our virtual platform, he must have received that. He thought it meant something about the start of school hours and days. That will be sent out as we get closer to August 17th, August 24th week. But the other question was he wanted to express how can he show his gratitude to the staff at Boothwyn and all around the district for the care and work they put in throughout last year and moving forward through this pandemic. The care and communication received from Mr. Norelli, Mrs. Wertzmeyer, Mrs. Bullen, and all other staff has been incredible. Thank you for that comment. And the next comment is from Robert and Joy Harvey. They reside at 906 Gloria Lane, Boothwyn, PA 19061. They state, we are Chichester School District parents who received the email and want my child to go back in a hybrid model, voted on and showed as a majority choice for our kids. As district parents had ample opportunity to choose a virtual solution for their students. Those of us who like to see them on campus would like our voices heard by our elected school board members as well as our superintendent. I have always appreciated Mr. Norelli's response every time I have reached out to him with a concern. My hope is that the board will also take my concerns to heart and vote for the majority choice of hybrid per the MOU request. We have faith in Chichester faculty and staff and want to see them in person in September. Parents who are concerned have the opportunity to vote for the virtual instruction. And while I appreciate that position, we hope that our position for hybrid in person will be respected as well. Thank you for your time. They were the only comments. Like I said, all the other were questions that were embedded in the presentation and hopefully answered. If not, we're available. We're here every day trying to get a plan together to answer any other questions that come in.
Dan, you're saying there were other emails that I heard what you said, that they were answered throughout the program, but how many other emails were there?
We had about 38.
38? Can we see them?
You probably get to see the day we can send them.
Yeah, can we see them, or are they, I'm just curious, are they of the same nature? You might answer the question, but as a school board member, I've been hearing from my constituency, and I've heard both sides, but the preponderance that I've heard from was for the hybrid model. How about those 38? Was that in there, or are they
You
just
see them,
questions
and
not
the
related
three of
to
us
that?
went through them. They were about IAs, they were about IEPs, they're about individual questions about their children.
Not so much the virtual or
The
hybrid.
comments that there's stuff over social media, so we know there's on both sides, so.
Oh, I get to see the social media, but I don't get to see these emails.
You are privy to them, like I just tell you
Send
that.
them all the emails.
There's no problem.
No, I don't want to be sent all the emails. I just
Well,
want
you
to
can just
know,
put them in
I
a
just
folder
want to
and
know what the general idea, are there, out of those 38 emails, are there a certain percentage that addressed hybrid versus virtual?
Really, when we read them, it really wasn't really addressed towards hybrid
Yeah,
virtual,
that's
it's more
important.
about concerns, maybe they already anticipated they were going virtual, or I don't know.
I know, there's
I
a
think
lot of
the
people,
MOUs answered that.
a lot of people did already assume that we're going virtual by the way that it was communicated. So I was just curious. Thank you for answering me.
Okay. All right, Mr. Norelli, do you want to explain so that the board members can know? I just explained the same thing. What does A and B mean?
All right, so my recommendations, A and B are attached as one vote, so we'll hit them first because A is revised health and safety plan, which basically you change the checkoff box from hybrid to virtual. All the other parameters are in place if we were to go to a hybrid regarding the measurements of social distancing, cleaning, sanitizing, etc. The approval of the emergency instructional plan is tied into the virtual schedule now.
Yeah.
So if we go back to hybrid, once again, we would do the same thing. We approve those two items again because they're tied in, they're interrelated, so to
Okay.
speak.
So-
C
Go ahead.
is the calendar. We would advise that calendar, even going to a hybrid, to give us more time to do the staffing piece.
I would agree with that.
And D is federal law that needs to be approved so we can continue to be under compliance regarding Title IX regulations. So I'm gonna have you vote on A and B together, C separate and D separate. Okay?
And what will they be again?
A and B is your voting for the virtual plan.
No.
They're interrelated, so I'm making a recommendation for the approval of items A and B.
With the board,
A motion from
I'll second.
Ms. Johnson, a second from Mr. Sill. You have a question, Mr. Sill?
Well, I did. I almost had a motion. But a motion has been made and I have seconded it. So, I was hoping that maybe at this juncture with all the information I've received, and we are hearing that there's some extensive further statistical data that's supposed to be released by the end of the week, that our board, similar to some other boards in our area, immediate area, Garnet Valley for one, have, and I understand the
can always
immediacy
go
of it, to postpone this until next Monday, until we have some further information. And the piece, and it's not Jeremy Curtis and his particular situation with the IEPs, but in general, that if we could hear more from the parents that it's going to be a totally untenable thing. I would like to have more information about going virtual. I don't want to vote for virtual and it just be that bad. I just wish I had some more info. And, if we would entertain the idea, wait till, what's our meeting?
We can
Monday or Tuesday?
always go back and do just what we did 2 weeks ago. It's on the agenda. We've made the motion. We have to vote.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So I have a motion by Mrs. Johnson, second by Mr. Sill. Mr. Cardell?
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Go ahead. You're breaking.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sill,
No.
Ms. Montella,
Absolutely not.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Bernthal,
No.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Baraco.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries. Thank you.
I'd also like to say, with Sean not being here, in all respect to him, Sean was definitely not, he was in favor of the hybrid. So I would just like to give him that honor to know. We didn't have the same vote, but he did support that, so just
That
so.
was very,
we know.
very good of you to say that because he was a proponent of.
He was.
the model.
We talked about an hour.
Yes, Ruben, thank you for saying that. He was very vocal on what he wanted his
Thank you.
vote to be, so I think that needs to be said, that was that is his opinion on how he wants it to go.
But a very amazing person, how he weighed it all out. And he spoke with a lot of people. So just like I did, just like all of you have, and all of us have made our own
His heart's
decisions.
entirely in the right place, like the rest of this board. I mean, I admire him for the research he
Absolutely.
did and the
Everybody on
things
this board is for
Yeah,
what they're
absolutely.
for. Okay, Mr. Norelli.
So we're making a motion to approve a revised academic calendar for the 2020-21 school year.
I'll make the motion.
A motion from Mrs. Johnson.
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Sill. Mr. Cardell?
Thank you. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sill,
Yes.
Ms. Montella,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Bartol,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes,
Bionica.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And the last item is compliance with the federal changes for Title IX regulations, giving me the authority to implement these changes before we have to revise our board policies. And because the deadline to do this is by August the 14th, we've been advised by Labor Council to make this motion tonight to put us in compliance, and then we'll be coming forward with policies in the next couple months.
This is for Title IX, correct?
Yes, correct.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
A motion by Mrs. Johnson, and a second by Mr. Still. Mr. Cardell?
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Sill? Yes. Ms. Montella?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Bartow?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Bionica?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any, do we know? And then what we'll do is we'll just go right into the review of next week.
You gotta close this meeting out.
Yeah. But I'm trying to make sure nobody's sending anything.
This is about sports again, so.
It's about sports, which so I'll answer that question. For the, we're kind of holding off. The Del Val has suspended their decision for 2 weeks. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that next week at our voting meeting and at our executive session. So, so I need a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then we need to go on.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Okay.
second.
I have a motion from Mr. Still, a second from Ms. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 7:30. The next meeting is beginning at 7:30. Well, 7:27. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Chichester School District. Tonight we will have just review our agenda for next week. Mr. Cardo, do you want to call roll?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Bionica?
Here.
Ms. Baker?
Here.
Mr. Bedwell? Mr. Bartow? Mr. Bartow? Myself here. Ms. Johnson?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Ms. Montella?
Here.
Mr. Still?
Present.
Mr. Hannigan?
Here.
Mr. Norelli?
Here.
Dr. Puckett?
Here.
Mr. Serino?
Here.
Mr. Testa? Dr. Curtis?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I just want to mention that tonight we had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss personnel issues. Are there any other presentations for this meeting?
No, or not.
Do we have any citizens' comments for this meeting, which we probably don't because they were off for the first meeting? Okay, you want to review the agenda?
Yes, so we're going to go right to curriculum instruction, which is D, page 5 out of 10 if you're going to the document in front of you. And we have action items in number 7. You can just review them and let us know if you have any questions or comments. Hearing none, I'm going to move on to personnel, number 11, page 7, 8, and 9. We're going to review under B, professional staff, and C, support staff. Those recommendations, and let us know if you have any questions or comments.
I see a lot of things in here that pertain to the job descriptions that I'm just wondering, that, I guess everybody's wondering this, yeah, they there, right? I mean, we're not busting nobody. Virtual.
That's a whole other question that we have.
Excuse me?
That's a whole other question we have
subject
to have.
that we have to talk about. That's
Okay,
personnel.
well, we're getting ready to vote on, that's what we're talking, I'm talking about it. If this is an inappropriate time to talk about it, then I'll just rest my case.
Well,
Like I mentioned in general, we're still obligated to transfer students that are charter school students and special education students that are placed. And then we have a choice to make regarding parochial and private, such as Catholic schools, because if we're not transporting our own students, we're not obligated to transport those students. That's the decision the board will have to make.
Oh, it works like that. They never contemplated that piece. That's the way the law is worded, and we don't transport our own students, then we're not obligated to transport parochial school students.
Yeah, the odd thing is we still have to do charter school, which is a whole other.
How does that work?
yeah,
The rates
There's
different.
language. It's
Very
actually-
interesting.
because Charter students are still considered public
Yeah.
students because you're paying.
because we pay
Are
for
we
it.
gonna, Dan, are we gonna have a chance, and this brings up a topic for me, are we gonna have a chance between now and our voting meeting to review what we were just talking
I would
about?
like to schedule a meeting. to do that.
Okay, no, that's
definitely
exactly what I
have
was
to.
calling for. I know these times have been very tough, and I noticed a real action on your part, and I think the cabinet's part, on communicating what I'm gonna say, and excuse me, better. I'm getting more emails, and we read them. But I would not mind during this period of time, this unique period in our history, that we had a different, formatted updates or formatted get-togethers. Maybe legally we can't do that, but I don't know, Tuesday morning with Dan, for a half an hour on a phone conference even. Just to keep us, I just feel like I'm just one step behind everything.
It's probably going to make a lot of sense considering what we're up against and the fluidity of what's going on, so.
It'd be great if they just have something like that. I don't know what format to take, Madam President, something.
Something for sure. I agree.
No comments for the personnel items, other than what Mr. Still had interjected, and then beyond that, that's it for the committee of the whole agenda.
Are there any other issues, any discussions anybody has before we adjourn the meeting? None? Okay. Can we get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
A motion from Ms. Johnson and a second from Mr. Still. The committee of the whole meeting is ended at 7:34. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay, what do I sign